Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts would love to play fetch with Easton Stick. Yes, Easton Stick is a member of the NFC South, which we are discussing today. Jon Ledyard, did you know that before you prepared for this podcast?
I did know, but was just because of a recent tweet. That's the only reason that I knew.
I didn't know, and I went to Chargers camp a couple weeks ago, and was like, "Where's Easton Stick?" Because he's just been there for like 10 years, it feels like. And the Chargers actually have, Trey Lance, DJ Uiagalelei, this is an interesting one, Taylor Heineke, but no Easton Stick. So he has moved on to the Falcons, who are one of the teams we are talking about today. Jon and I are pre-recording this before week 1 of preseason. We'll get to that with the Saints. It doesn't really matter for the other teams, in my opinion, but just in case something happens, I feel like this division, first of all, I said before we started recording, I think this is the best fans. I know I said Falcons fans are my favorite, but I like all of these fans. I think this, the division gets a bad rap, obviously, because it is not as good as the other divisions. I would argue that makes it more interesting, though, because outside of, the Saints, it's kind of anyone's game, including the Atlanta Falcons. The Bucs won last year. I think the Bucs are most people's favorites to repeat this year. Mm-hmm. But, as I prepared for this and looked at some of the Falcons' underlying numbers, some of the roster changes, I found myself getting excited for Falcons football, Jon. Particularly the offense, which, is going to build on what we saw at the end of last season with, of course, the young quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. And that seems like the place we have to start because really the offense is basically the same. Not really many changes. They really focused on improving. They did add Easton Stick. Sorry, that was... Kirk Cousins is still there. That's actually probably the most surprising part of all of it. The biggest change is the change at center, which we could talk about shortly, but otherwise they're running it back. So Michael Penix Jr., I don't know if you've had time to go back and watch his starts. He looks to me exactly like how I expected him to look. Mm-hmm. The goods and the bads. How did you feel revisiting that, and how do you feel about him generally headed into this season?
I think a little bit optimistic in just that it doesn't seem like the stage is overwhelming to him, I would say. No. Like, it seems like he's somebody that's able to step in, officially run the offense, at least to a degree, from a mental workload perspective. It doesn't look like he's out there just a hope and a prayer. I mean, even when you can go back to Bo Nix at the beginning of last season, it was like, oh man, and then he got better as the season went on. Mm-hmm. But Penix, when he did get in there, it seemed like, oh, he seems very comfortable from a mental perspective, being able to handle the rigors of what it looks like to be an NFL starting quarterback. And it's also going to be, I think one of the most telling things is going to be, what does this team look like with Michael Penix? Because we talked all about like the pistol stuff with Kirk Cousins and all that stuff. And then those numbers actually went up with Penix. And so are they going to be like the team that leans in, like they're 50-50 pistol and they're running this zone offense out of the pistol and all this kind of stuff, or are we going to see more under center stuff? What I think, just the evolution of Penix and Zach Robinson as a duo, I am really most excited to see that this season for Atlanta.
Same. There's the Penix side of it, and then there's the offensive structure. So the Penix side, again, when I say we saw what we expected, confident, aggressive, big-armed quarterback. I mean, after catching Kirk Cousins passes all year, those receivers must have been like, oh my God, this thing's like flying like way over our heads. And that, to me, I think he did have to work on his touch a little bit. You saw that. But again, that was kind of he has a cannon. I think the placement sometimes can be a little bit erratic. But, some of the outs he was hitting in those games were just absolute piss missiles. And I thought he showed he's never going to be a dual threat quarterback. He's never going to be even much of a scrambler, but you saw sufficient, the contrast with Cousins in terms of just pure pocket mobility in the face of pressure was, exciting to see. I think you'd want to see him again, improve, just continue building on what he did last year. Touch, accuracy, decision-making, all of that's going to come with time. The structure of the offense is what I really want to talk to you about, because you touched on this. It didn't change at all. I think the Falcons offense was kind of fascinating because it was such an outlier from the rest of the NFL in terms of just, almost exclusively outside zone rushing attack. If they were in the gun, Kirk Cousins was throwing the ball 90% of the time, just under 89% of the time, they were throwing the ball. And then they did a decent amount of pistol to at least try to create some run pass conflict, almost no play action. So Penix comes in and we all know why. Kirk Cousins was not comfortable turning his back to the defense and handing it off. Penix comes in and it's just 3 games, but all the splits are kind of the same. I'm looking at in terms of, formationally, the run game. This was an almost entirely 11 personnel team, by the way, with the 3 wide receivers on the field. And then the run pass splits within those formations, again, almost exactly the same. So I got into a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter about this with Brett Coleman and Ted Wint. Like, we were wondering, okay, was that because it was just so late in the season and Penix was mostly in the gun in college and they weren't comfortable changing up the run game and changing up? Or is this just who Zach Robinson is? Like, is he just, playing the Rams 2020 hits or whatnot? Do you think that needs to change, I guess, would be my question? Because, I think that's an important decision for the Falcons to make this offseason.
I think it does. I don't know whether it will need to change this season in order for them to be at their absolute best or for Penix to develop the most. But if you look at some of the best offenses in the league, versatility and evolution are some of the most important things you can see. I mean, you look even in their own division last year, and we'll talk about the Bucs and what they did, but talk about just versatility in the way that they changed their run game even. And here's what's interesting to me about Atlanta is they're loosed from the shackles of Arthur Smith, which I'll save those takes for another pod with you at some other time. But they finally went and were the rushing team that you hoped they'd be. And Bijan Robinson was the back that we hoped we'd see. And that to me is really interesting because here they are, one of the most zone heavy rushing attacks in the NFL. They finished, and this is with that like 1090 win filter on, but they were first in the NFL in rush success rate last season. And so you have that kind of rush success rate. And then from the offense that they were running, and yes, the passing game had all these ups and downs, and they could never get out of the pocket, right? Nobody could ever move outside the pocket and throw. They could never, like you said, the play action stuff. There was just hardly any of that kind of stuff. And so there was they were really siloed in their pass game, I think, to teams that couldn't defend them when they spread the field. Those were the teams they could have success against in the passing game, and then nobody else, basically. No other way could they have success. They have to find more answers for Penix while still maintaining can we keep this run game going? In my opinion, I think they're going to have a hard time keeping this level of rush success without schematic changes, even though I appreciate what they did last year, but I think it's going to be a lot more difficult this season unless they're able to evolve the scheme some.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable that the run game was as efficient as it was with, when they ran the ball, teams knew that they were running the ball and they knew what they're calling. It's so hard to live in the NFL that way. Like, as you were saying, the best teams do not do that. The best teams create run pass conflict constantly and are constantly displacing defenders and using their offensive lines in different ways. And again, Bijan, I just think he's such a special player, man. Like I feel like his numbers are good. The efficiency is good, but it could be so much better, which is crazy. But I think they're leaving meat on the bone with him, and he was very efficient, but he wasn't very explosive. He was only, let's see, in last year, they were 20th in explosive run rate. The year before, he had a much higher rate when they put him under center a lot. It's easier when you're running outside zone. It's easier to hit explosives when you're under center. So again, it's efficient, but you want him to also have that explosive element to his game. And there are things he can do in terms of, getting closer to defenders before he makes his moves and things. I mean, he's just so elusive and he's a really smart back. And I just feel like if, to go back to the original question, do they need to change some of their tendencies? Yes, I don't think they have to be a decent offense, but to really unlock Bijan Robinson and to really, I think, also make life easier for Penix. You gotta run play action with him, right? And these receivers who I think are good. This should be a good play action passing attack with Drake London over the middle of the field and Michael. But again, when they switched quarterback, they were still running it against they mostly played bad defenses at the lowest rate in the NFL. And that just doesn't make sense to me. But my bet is that a lot of that was just, it was such a late season change. I hope they come out with a different look this year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and the other thing about this is you mentioned the Bijan thing. I think it's a great point. It's not like they can't create explosives. Even Tyler Algier last year had some explosives. So there are some things I think that they can tweak and adjust. But you're right. Like if your offense is going to be built around Bijan Robinson, you're going to spend the kind of draft capital you did to bring him in, then he needs to be your most explosive all around player. And you need to do what it takes to be able to help maximize that as an offense. And so what does that look like from a schematic perspective? I don't think there's any scheme Bijan Robinson can't operate in from a rushing perspective. But yeah, last year you need him to be up there with the Jahmyr Gibbs, the Derrick Henrys, like those types of players in terms of creating splash plays in the run game. That part hasn't gotten there yet, even though, I mean, you look at his missed tackle rates and how he's getting something out of messy situations a lot of the time. So even with the numbers kind of looking pretty good for Atlanta last year, if you go back to the tape, I think you will find there's a long way they can go still as a group to create a really explosive rushing attack, a la something like what Philadelphia did last year, those kinds of things. I don't think it's outside the wheelhouse for the personnel that they have, especially with some of the pieces they have at receiver and some of those kind of guys. But I do think that right now it's going to require some schematic changes and creativity from their coaching staff.
Yeah, there should be opportunities for the way they run the ball and their commitment to it to create easier looks in the pass game. And then I do think they have the receivers to take advantage of that. I mean, London and Mooney, who are their 1-2, Darnell Mooney, are a good fit with Michael Penix, I believe. Penix, I think, needs to work a little bit on throwing over the middle of the field, which is really where I love to see Drake London cook. But the combination of those two and Kyle Pitts, they're not super deep behind the three of them. That should be enough. Again, coupled with that run game. Like you think about the Lions, for example, which was probably, I would guess the Lions ran the second most outside zone to Atlanta without having it on the top of my head. And you think about what they were able to do with the play action pass attack off of that. That should be available. And then you have Michael Penix, so you should be like, we're pushing the ball downfield a little bit more. I just think I'm kind of looking at this through the lens of scheme and some of those tendencies, because I think they matter so much to optimizing this offense. Otherwise, you're just living with a lot of ISO ball, which is kind of what you saw, I think, in the last 3 games. Penix hitting a lot of the front side. I feel like his relationship or marriage with Zach Robinson is going to be as pivotal as anything in this division this year.
Yeah. I mean, and Drake London's a key piece too, right? A guy, I think he's one of the most improved players in the entire NFL last year. I mean, it didn't get a lot of publicity, but when you look at how often he was able to line up in the slot, almost 40% of his reps compared to the year before, like a huge jump up for him. And then you watch the inside outside stuff and the releases, the blocking. He became kind of the peak version of what we thought he could be coming out in the draft, where it was like, well, he's this big X receiver who can run vertically and win jump balls, but the speed's going to be an issue. The separation wasn't an issue last year. If you watched him, he's just really mastered the nuances of his position. So if you look across, you have a piece like London, you have a piece like Mooney, you have a piece like Robinson. There's a lot of versatility in some of the pieces that they have on offense in terms of what they can do. And I'm just excited to see if the coaching staff can lean into that from a creativity perspective.
I did allude to the one change, which was Ryan Newsel. He played last year. He looked fine, so I'm not terribly worried about that, to be honest. Also, there's continuity on all 4 of the other 5 positions, so I think that they should still be pretty good. Defense is where you potentially have the biggest changes. So let's get into it. I don't need to tell you guys, listeners to this podcast, how futile the Falcons. There's all kinds of fun historical stats. I think the last double-digit sack guy was Vic Beasley. Last year, their leading sack getter was Ebiketie with, how many off the top of your head? How many sacks he had?
I'm gonna say, was he over Caden Ellis? Did he have more than Caden Ellis?
We had one more than Caden Ellis.
Oh my gosh! Let me guess.
Caden Ellis is their best pass rusher, by the way. Caden Ellis is like
sure.
very.
You just stole my next point. I was about to say, like, when your best pass rusher is a converted linebacker. Anyway, 6,
Washington.
7, 6.
6. Yeah, he had 6.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Okay, so they go out. So in the last few years, they've really invested on the defensive interior. Grady Jarrett's gone, so now you need Ruggero, or my strategy is just to say his name really fast, or Brandon Dorless, who have just really not. I mean, there's been injuries and whatever, but you haven't got anything. You got to get something out of those guys. But they really obviously focused on adding to the pass rush of the draft, drafting Jalen Walker with the 8th overall pick, trading up for James Pierce, giving a ton to go get James Pierce Jr. Braylon Trice is back from injury. It was a lost season for him. He's a player I liked at Washington, who I think can, if not be like a starter, at least gives you good depth, in my opinion. And then Leonard Floyd is in the mix now.
What a room.
Who do you think is the most likely to be a difference maker of all of the edges that I've listed? Is there anyone that you feel the most optimistic about?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I this season, you actually might honestly talk about maybe, even though I wasn't high on him pre-draft, it might be James Pierce this season. Long term, I think it's going to be Jalen Walker. James Pierce, I was not super high on pre-draft, but Jalen Walker's barely even played this position. So to ask him to be the highest impact guy out of all these guys, and the rest of them we know have been disappointing. You mentioned Trice's injury. It's possible he could contribute at a higher level this year. Floyd, it really is. He's been one of my favorite kind of mercenary guys for a while, but it does seem like he's aging and like he's not able to quite threaten the edge. He loves that inside move, he always has, and I don't know if he can really open it up for himself like he used to. So I don't know how much of an impact he'll be. And then there's just the fact that they're going to want to play these young guys, and Pierce is probably going to get the bulk of the opportunities from a pure edge rushing perspective on long and late downs. There is tons of amazing tools with James Pierce. The length, also, you talk about explosiveness and burst off the ball. That will just open chances up for you. Plus, when you're playing limited snaps, he's going to be more fresh in those rush downs. So I think that the stats will look better for him maybe than the other guys this year. But to me, Walker's the guy that this lives and dies with. I don't think Pierce is ever going to be an every down stud type of player. And Walker has the mentality. He's the leader, right, too. That's part of the why they drafted him. They need a leader. Who's going to be the next guy? Grady Jarrett, no longer here. Like, there's a lot of turnover and change in this defense. They need Walker to be that guy. But to do that, he's got to be on the field all 3 downs. Where does he play all 3 downs? That was a big question with him pre-draft. I think it's on the edge. I'm hopeful he can develop there, but even though they did a lot to address it, there's still tons of questions here. They just have more upside than they used to.
So I really like Jalen Walker. He was my edge 2 after
Me
Carter
too.
in the draft. I share kind of the same questions. I wouldn't say concerns, but questions for you as to what's the best way to use him early in his career. And will he actually put up productive pass rush numbers early on? I don't know. And that's sort of disentangled from how I view him as a player, because I think the tools are tremendous. I guess when I thought about him in the NFL, I was like imagining him like, I don't know, not in the Ravens, because obviously they're never going to get him, but
Brian
like,
Flores, maybe?
yeah, like in a kind of a wonkier defense where, he'd mostly be on the ball, but he'd be dropping into coverage. He could be a real part of like a simulated pressure plan.
You can
And
imagine him with Jeff Ulbrich and
yeah, I'm just looking, and well, I will say this: Raheem Morris has that DNA coming from
yeah.
LA, so I'm very curious to see how he is utilized early on, because he is
This whole
not
thing is
like a
wild.
just line him up, put his, you know what I mean, like, but there's at least shots. They're taking shots here, and it's a strategy. I mean,
this is the worst pass rushing team in the league last year, them or Carolina. We're going to talk about. By the way, I love pass rushing. You have me on to talk about the 2 worst pass rushing teams in the league. I mean, Atlanta was a mess last year in this department, and so
one of the Penix games was against Carolina, and him and Bryce Young were having the time of their lives play each other. Just 0 pass rush, just 2 kids out there hooping. Bryce Young was just like, I can't believe this is my life right now, compared to earlier in his career. And this is comfortably the worst pass rushing division. I mean, God, do the Bucks have the best pass rush
in this division? Yeah,
but
probably.
that's bad. Okay, so the Falcons defense, it is notable to me that the Falcons were actually in the mix again of the NFC South last year, despite the fact that their defense finished 29th in DVOA. 27th versus the pass, 32nd on third down, 31st in the red zone, 30th in pressure percentage. So the hope is there's nowhere to go but up with better coaching, with a bunch of shots on goal up front. If one of the guys that we've discussed, and I'm including Aurora and Dorless in that conversation too, by the way,
Mhm.
takes a step forward as a, you know, interior disruptor next to Onyemata, you feel decent about it. But then I start to get uncomfy again when I look at the secondary and try to figure out who's playing corner in this group. Oh my goodness. I feel like I don't know, I just hadn't thought about it in a while or something. And opposite AJ Terrell, like
Yeah.
it's really, really a weak group of corners.
It is, and they don't have a nickel, and that killed them last year, Mina. Like, they had such a hard time because they were so weak at the nickel position. Teams just constantly found the mismatch. They would attack that position. They would put that position in conflict. I mean, they could not figure that spot out, and it's not been D. Alford. They had some other guys last year that aren't on the roster that played some snaps there, and they were a disaster. Clark Phillips hasn't been able to play the nickel, really be out there as much as some people. He was a big draft darling, draft
Oh, I
Twitter
love to
guy,
say
and
I liked him. I thought he was gonna be like a little like the next,
yeah. Like
Mike
Mike
Hilton.
Hilton or
Yeah,
something. Yeah,
yeah, right.
exactly. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
those
And
guys.
they hope it's Billy Bowman. I mean, certainly adds speed and intensity to the defense. He's very small too. They've really kind of gravitated toward these really smaller nickels, and they
Mhm.
really needed to be somebody. I mean, that's a new role for Bowman too, because he was playing. I mean, he moved around in Oklahoma, but this will be a really, if he does end up playing there for them, it'll be really non-traditional. But that position has been so important in the NFL over the last couple of years, and it's just magnified more and more because then it's not
Yeah,
just the slot corner position, but it's just corners with inside outside ability. You have to have basically all your corners now. The NFL is playing so condensed, and you do a
yeah,
good job talking about this on the podcast. Like, if that's going to be the case with wide receivers, if we're going to value wide receivers that can play condensed, they're not outside the numbers or close to the boundary just on the vertical game, then we've got to value corners who can play there too. And Atlanta just doesn't hardly have any of those guys. Like, even Terrell, who's I think is good, has been much better when he's outside the numbers than he has been when he's playing from a reduced position. So that part, they just don't have players that fit enough of the modern game in their secondary. And Bates saves a ton with how many turnovers it
yeah.
creates and just how good he is on the ball. But it can only save so much with this group. They just don't match up well with the current place that the NFL's in.
Well, forget the NFL. How do you match up with the Bucks if you don't
Yeah.
have a spot, man? Because that team is like, I was watching. I know we'll get to the Bucks. I was watching like clips of Emeka Ibuka, and
Mhm.
it's just like it
Yep.
looks amazing. I was thinking about like who in the division is going to cover all these receivers, particularly on the inside. Certainly not in Atlanta. I do like the safety that they drafted out of Notre Dame,
My
Xavier
number one
Watts.
safety.
Was he your number one safety?
Yep.
Really? Third
And
round.
maybe I'll look wrong, but I thought the ball skills and then the versatility. He's another guy I'm interested. Does he step down in the slot and play some there this season? Because
Good
with Bates'
question.
versatility,
Yeah.
I think that could be the key for them if
That's
he's
an
able to do that.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, watching him at Notre Dame, I thought he was really smart. He could play man zone. They play a ton of man, obviously. He could play the run. I think again, the opportunity to play with Jesse Bates if he ends up playing safety, you get a lot of freedom there. So yeah, I think they could be strong there. Playing him inside is an interesting idea. He has versatility, I think, to play
Mhm.
both free, strong, and slot. So you're hopeful, but it's a lot of hope with this defense.
Yeah.
I thought I would feel, I don't know. So I think like just kind of put a pin on the Falcons. Offense optimistic, curious. Defense pessimistic, hopeful is how I would
Yeah.
sum it up. Does that feel right?
Super fair way to put it. And the other thing I'll just say is, how do Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich come together? Like, what does that
Yeah,
look like? Because they just are very different
definitely.
approaches in the past. And are they going to gravitate more toward Ulbrich, or is Ulbrich going to change to match kind of what Morris has done? Morris has been the guy that's probably evolved more. So that the whole thing, everything about this team, totally fascinating to watch from a coaching
I
perspective, I
forgot
think.
Leonard Floyd is a Morris guy too from
Mm,
the Rams. They have a lot of Rams on the Falcons. A lot of Rams preseason all stars in the back end. Let's do the Panthers next instead of the Bucks. So I should have said this at the beginning, but you co-host a great podcast called The Read Optional with Ollie Connolly. You do some other. Sorry, what are the other places that? Because I know you cover the Steelers as well, the
Yep,
Bucks.
my Substack, Audibles and Analytics, that's where it's all at. Steelers stuff, Buck stuff. Because I was a beat reporter for both those teams for a while, and then tons of NFL draft stuff. And then Ollie and I talk about the whole league and
Yes.
the draft year round on the Read Optional podcast too.
So I mentioned Ollie because folks should absolutely go check out
Mhm.
your guys' podcast. It is excellent. Because I thought he did a great piece earlier this year on Bryce Young that I
Mhm.
revisited as I was thinking about. I started looking up some of the Bryce Young splits before and after the great change and the comeback, if we're gonna call it that. And then as I was looking at the splits, I kind of led me back to that piece, which I really think folks should go check out. Because it's one thing for us to kind of just point out, like, okay, like Bryce Young was obviously significantly better after he returned into the lineup in the second half of the season. He looked more comfortable. He was throwing with anticipation. But I thought Ollie did a great job of discussing how Dave Canales changed his offense to better suit Young, who was sort of miscast. Ollie wrote about this as kind of this like Russell Wilson, like under center play action quarterback. That's just not who he is. He's a point guard. He should be in empty. The ball should be coming out faster. Like, what did you see from Bryce? And we can get into the numbers in a second. In the second half of the season, and what is your general like optimism level, or do you think it's being overblown right now? Are we, do we got to pump the brakes a little bit on the Bryce Young is back narrative?
Well, the most encouraging thing to me was just the fearlessness and the mental stamina. Like,
Yeah,
I thought that was the most important thing. Ollie did a great job at it, and he touched so well on the schematic things that they did to kind of alleviate things for him and make things a little bit simpler or better fit, I should say, for him, not simpler. Um, I think for him, it's just like the toughness to stand in. I mean, he really got hammered a good bit
yeah,
last year, and it wasn't like the offensive line was a mess, but it was just like there were just moments where I was just like, man, what's this guy meant? He was one of the smallest quarterbacks in the league. He's one of the smallest frames of any quarterback in the league. And so you didn't wanted to see like how was he just been benched? Like how is he going to respond to all this? And I thought that part of it really impressed me. And then the arm, well, we finally got to see it. I think that was the real big thing. For a while, it felt like when we did see the arm strength, it was in a wild misses all the time. I think we got to see him really rip the ball, which mattered some. Now, my question with Bryce Young is mainly how many different ways can you play with him and how many different things can he do? Or is he going to be so siloed to certain things
yeah.
that when teams get to the offseason, they're like, okay, what is this guy doing now? This is it. Like he can't do anything else. Like, okay, like we're gonna, we can handle this. And that would be my question and concern with him is what does he do when you take away what he did best last season, when you do take away some of the point guard stuff, some of the easy stuff. But I am hopeful for him, and I was hopeful for him pre-draft. I really liked him. I think maybe I was a little too lenient on some of the concerns with him, some of the physical issues that he might have at the next level. But I still think that there's a good quarterback in here. The question will just be, does he have enough pitches in his arsenal to be able to kind of evolve with a league that asks you to evolve pretty much on a year-to-year basis at this position?
So different from Penix in a million different ways, but it's like if you combined their arms, you'd actually get like the perfect quarterback. He's not going to fire it. He doesn't have cannon,
Right.
but he does throw. You saw in the second half of the season the arm talent that you saw in college, which was he does throw with touch. He throws with anticipation. He's good at throwing guys open, and he's really, really smart. Um, and I think he has a very acute sense of his own capability, which sometimes can lead to a high throwaway rate, quite frankly. But he's not going to force it. And I think in the second half, you saw the offense really take advantage of that skill set. Second half of the season, some of the splits that jumped out the most. You talked about him standing in the pocket. He was sixth in QBR under pressure in the second half of the season, which is
Yeah.
crazy. And they played some decent defenses too. The Eagles game, comes to mind. Chiefs,
Cardinals.
Cardinals doing some stuff. When he wasn't empty, this is what Ollie wrote about. He had a QBR of 91, which was the most of any quarterbacks who used empty a lot, and they
Hmm.
used it a ton. After he came back, he finished with the third most plays in empty. His time to throw came way down. His pressure to sack rate came way down as well. Both of those were astronomical his rookie season. And yeah, I think all of this just tells the story of a quarterback who was just much more comfortable in the
Yeah.
offense. I think now the Panthers have to figure out a couple of things. One is what you alluded to, which is okay, you know, w- how do we take the next step, marry it all together, run pass, I think is part of that. And then did we add enough talent to where even if he doesn't like, take another leap, the talent is better so that the offense is more efficient around him. I don't know is my answer. I like Ted McMillan a lot. I really like that pick. I think he addresses a very glaring need that they had, which was they needed a perimeter ball winner. You really saw the absence of that last year. Is that enough? Not a particularly strong tight end group. Like, what do we think about this group of skill players around Bryce Young?
I really like it. I think that they did enough to be a playoff team. We'll see. I don't know if they're quite there yet, but I mean, they had a
We can talk
long
about
way.
the other side of the ball is where that vision comes to a little bit of a halt for me. But offensively,
Yes, the other side of the ball needs some help still. I mean, they did do some things, and we'll talk about that. But offensively, yeah, Tet McMillan, to me, again, you talk about the potential to be the type of piece that matters in today's NFL. I know I'm gonna really beat this horse today because we're gonna talk about Ibuka eventually as well. And I think that it really matters. But yes, McMillan, I think, and you've already kind of seen it. I mean, we'll see when the real bullets start flying, but you've already kind of seen it in camp. And you saw it at Arizona too, when he reduced his split, when he has to work inside outside, when he has to read coverages. Can he go into the middle of the field and make catches? The answer was yes, 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 all over the place in college. And why can't it happen in the NFL then? That's where
Mhm.
these types of players need to be able to win. We focus so much on how explosive is he compared to other guys? And yes, it does matter, but more than anything, I mean, look at most of the league is zone coverage. And so do you know what you're doing on a regular basis? And do you know what you're doing from different alignments? That's why I really like Ted McMillan. I don't think he was without question, but I really like him. I think that they just have enough good players now. And look, they added another one in Renfro. Again, can we get intelligence in the room? Can we get guys who know how to get open, who know how to read defense? Like, I think all that stuff really matters. I'm really high on Jalen Coker. I think his tape was really good last year. I know he's got like kind of a hive now, so I'm maybe it feels like I'm
Okay.
jumping on the bandwagon. I promise. I watched his first game in the league, and I was like tweeting like this guy might be able to play. Like, so I like their pieces offensively, Mina. I asked the question when I look at Carolina, why are we so buzzy about Atlanta and not, it doesn't seem like there's that same energy for Carolina. I kind of like, Ollie and I talked about this recently. I kind of like Carolina more at this point.
Well, that's a great question. I think Atlanta has the bigger name skill. I mean, Carolina doesn't have Bijan. I actually think I like the running back group now that Chuba was excellent. Rico Dowdle, I thought was really, I thought Dallas should have kept him. So that was weird to
Yeah.
me. Whole other thing. But this is a better run blocking offensive line than pass protecting. But I think the Bijan and then Drake London, you need Ted McMillan to show it, like London has shown it. So I think that's probably a lot,
Yep.
But yeah, it is potentially a very interesting group because but for me, like that level of interest really depends on McMillan being a dude.
Yeah.
Because if he is the number one, and by the way, I love what you said about him winning over the middle of the field. I want like Bryce Young to me is a really great slant thrower. Like I don't want it just to be Ted McMillan outside the numbers go balls. That's not even though he is really really good. His body control, his contested catch ability is really important. And he's not like a yak guy. I do want him to not have a limited route tree. So, but my point is this: if he is that dude, if he is worthy of the 8th overall pick, then everyone else, I love where they slot in. I feel good about it. But if McMillan has like a Keon Coleman like rookie season, then I think at the end of the year we're looking back at it and like not feeling as though they did enough. So
Yeah.
I do feel a lot depends on him living up to his draft potential. And I liked him a lot. By the end of the draft process, I was like, what am I missing here? This dude is gigantic and catches everything. Why are people turning on him as a prospect? I feel insane. So I'm high on him, but he is important.
And the fit with Bryce Young is going to be curious too. And that's if there's plenty of reasons to be hesitant on Carolina, I think, and we'll talk about the defense in a second.
Yeah.
But you mentioned with Bryce Young, I think you said it really well. Like it's not a guy that's going to drive the football that much. So again, when it goes back to me, like how many different ways can he play? How many different areas of the field and types of route combinations can he win on compared to the top guys? If not, and I don't think that maybe that should be the expectation, he's got to almost become Joe Burrow. Like he's got to become like Joe Burrow-esque, which he showed signs that that isn't like the most insane thing. I'm not saying he'll reach that level because Joe Burrow is just absolutely special and unique in how he plays. But to me, like that's the path for Bryce Young, and it's a very narrow path. If you can
Yeah.
be as good as Joe Burrow in that narrow of a path, and I don't even Burrow might be able to do way more than that. We just never will find out, it seems like. But with Young, if he can play that way and be that guy, then it opens up a world of possibilities for them offensively and for Tet, I think. So that'll be the number one thing to watch this year.
He could also benefit from not being saddled with the worst defense in the NFL. So let's, because
Sure could.
field position and all of that factors in. Oh my God, this defense was a nightmare last season. I mean, it was just poor Giro Evero. Like, I don't know
I
how
would
you
say that
do.
late in the season against the Bucks when they played, what was that, week 17 or 18? That
Yeah.
was the worst defense I think I've ever seen on a football field. Like I mean, guys were just literally running into each other. Like it was almost all practice squad players who barely played at
Yes,
that point. But
that's
what a mess it
you
was.
feel bad ragging on them. You feel bad for the coach. The whole thing, who was like a head coaching candidate, in the past, where they had a great defense in Denver. He was with the Rams. He stuck around. And look, if they turn things around, he will and should get the lion's share of credit because the bar is hell. Hell, what does hell look like? Hell is 32nd in both success and EPA per play against the run, allowing 5.2 yards per carry. The Eagles average 4.9 yards per carry. So they basically turned every team into the super version of the Eagles. They were not better against the pass, of course. They were 32nd in pressure rate for the second year in a row. FTN Fantasy does run defense by like layered levels of the defense. I was like looking at that to try to diagnose the problem, right? Like you'll have a defense. I think the Chargers were like this, or where they're really bad up front, but maybe good at linebacker level. They were 32nd in stuff rate, 32nd in adjusted line yards, 32nd at the second level, 32nd. Like it was every level failed to stop the run. So they go out, they add some big dudes.
Yeah.
Bobby Brown from the Rams, Tershawn Wharton. These are not sexy names, but they are competent NFL players.
Mhm.
Derek Brown returns, which is, of course, massive. They added some edge players as well. I want to get to. They also added Christian Roseboom from the Rams. Don't have to get into that. Do you feel that this run defense will be improved? Because that was just the biggest problem with this team.
Yes, it will definitely be improved.
Or not to be.
Because there's nowhere, like you said, the bar is hell, and also because Derek Brown is really, really good, and I hope he's still really good. Obviously, we won't know for 100% until he comes back from this injury fully, but I think he's really good. I don't know how much better as a pass rush group they'll be than last year, but they've given themselves more ability to certainly to do that, I think. Now they lost Clowney. He was their number one pressure guy last year with 44 pressures. The next closest player, do you want to guess how many pressures the next closest player had on the season?
27.
26. Very good, Mina. It was DJ Wanu.
Juwanna, yeah.
Yes.
Vikings legend.
Vikings legend, and he is still in this rotation, as is Patrick Jones will be here too. They signed him as a free agent, Princely, Oman Mielen, and Nick Scorton, who they drafted in the second and third round. So they really did go out and they said, you know what, we're going to do it by committee. These stars don't change. I know we have talked all offseason about, will TJ Watt get traded? Will Myles Garrett get traded? Will Michael Parsons get traded? Will Trey Hendrickson get traded? Will Max Crosby get traded? That was early. We haven't seen any of them get traded, folks, and I don't think we're going to. Those guys don't just. So who can you get? And that's what they did. They did the best with what was capable, what was available to them, I think, in a lot of ways. And we'll see. I like Princely. I wasn't as high on Scorton. Flip their spots. Maybe you can talk me into it. I think they'll be better for sure. They certainly, again, it's more upside. You did see Atlanta and Carolina spam the position of need and recognize it's so important. If you don't have that one guy, the Chris Jones, the Nick Bosa, and that are playing the Super Bowl every year because they're just so good that make the rest of the unit go, you better be 8 deep. and now Philly's got one of those guys too, but for years, they've just been, okay, we're just going to be 8 deep and we're going to be all good. And they didn't have like the one star once Fletcher Cox was aging. And so I think Carolina's and Atlanta have said they've recognized the need. They've recognized what wins in today's NFL. So I don't think it's as much of a recognition problem. Now we just have to find out, do they have the talent and the coaching to put it all together? And I think plenty of reason to be skeptical still about both, even if there's more upside here than there used to be.
They tried to add Milton Williams. You remember that?
That's right.
He tried. But yeah, your point about the lack of edges available, like Josh Sweat was the best free agent edge available, and he got the big contract. It's just not a great group of free agents. Clowney's still out there, so
they might bring him back. Who knows?
Yeah, he might come back. But yeah, they basically took sorry, too far away from my mic. They took the Atlanta approach, but without spending. They spent like half as much as Atlanta did. Right. More than half. It's a little less than that. They chose, I think, correctly, the receiver in the first round, because the Bryce Young part of this equation is the most important part. You are, I know, really big on watching the edges ahead of the draft. I don't think I talked much about Nick Scorton or Princely, who were second and third round. I think Nick was second, right? And Princely was third.
Yep.
Are you optimistic about either of those players? Like, if you had to place your bets on one of them maybe popping, who would it be?
It would be Princely for me. I just think a really nuanced pass rusher who knows how to rush and how to move, really good bend and flexibility. Then he has the inside counter and he can hit you with strength too. I think just the ability to win all three planes, outside, inside, through. I think that's a really important part of rushing, because it makes you really hard to be predictable to pass set against. Scorton just lacks the tools, the type of stuff that we want to see from an edge rusher. Like, if you're talking about burst off the ball, if you're talking about bend and flexibility at the top of the arc, how fast do you plant and change direction and cross face to threaten the inside shoulder? Like, he just really didn't have those things. And when he went up against NFL caliber guys at tackle, they really raced him and took him out of games. And I think that was Membao. When he faced Membao, it was just erased and kind of taken out of the game. Princely has way more in the bag, I think. So that's where I'm more excited about him. Scorton plays hard, though, and I've tossed around. His weight's gone all over the place. He's been in the 280s. He's been in the now I think in the pre-draft process, he was way down in his weight. Where will he play? Will he be sort of an inside sub guy eventually in his career and kind of find his way there? But he plays really hard, super physical type of guy you want in the locker room for sure. But I think Princely's probably the more talented rusher right now.
Derek Brown will certainly create opportunities for these edges if he plays like he did before injury. So hope.
He and JC Horn are really good players who just haven't been able to stay consistently healthy. Like, those guys will make a big difference if they're able to stay out there.
Horn got paid. He is like, they had to pay someone. He that's not to diminish him. That sounds like a diminishing him. I think he's a little boomer bust for a number one, but his booms are, I would put up there with any, any man covered corner in the NFL, but he just gives up a little too many big plays for my liking. And then opposite him, it's pretty bleak. They did add Trevon Merrick. That should help on the back end a bit.
That's the best run defender they added, I think.
Yep.
I mean, he's not Budda Baker. Nobody is, but man, he will fit. And I think that will matter a lot for them, having a guy flying up from the third level to fit the run the way he will.
If they can just be like the 24th best run defense, then at least they'll be competitive in game. I cannot stress enough how insanely bad this run defense was last year. You talked about it with the Bucs. I mean, that was like the, what is it, Tonk Bond coughing baby meme that they like. It was just, all right, well, I've teased the Bucs enough. Let's take a break, come back and talk about the wagon that is the Bucs offense. All right, we're back. I was talking about the Broncos defense, and somebody replied to me, but they didn't play anyone. They only, like, what, the Bucs? I was like, yeah, the Bucs. The Bucs offense was unbelievable last year. I feel like, and I know Bucs fans are screaming, why didn't I put them higher in my top 10? Maybe I'm overweighting the Liam Cohen departure. We'll get into that. But was this like, did you feel like as a Bucs fan, the dominance and efficiency of the Bucs offense was kind of slept on last year? Because the numbers are unbelievable.
Ever since I started covering the Bucks in 2020, I felt like everything about the team's been slept on. They won a Super Bowl, and I feel like it just kind of was people went on to the next thing, and that's kind of how it is with Tampa Bay and the smaller markets a little bit. But the offense last year, yeah, I mean, I thought from a creativity perspective was everything that you want in the modern NFL, right? I mean, the evolution of the run game was where it started, and then how they built off of that with the play action passing game, but also being able to spread the field, like when you look at versatility and you talk about that kind of stuff, the word gets thrown around a ton in today's league. The 2024 Bucks were like a picture of versatility, both with their player usage and then when you talk about the line of the personnel packages, the way they line guys up, the types of offense they'd run. And that's where I think Baker might be the most interesting quarterback in the league to discuss because you can do a ton with him. Usually those are the top guys, but then because he's so wild with sacks and turnovers, you're not quite sure. He could like lose you any game, but he allows you to create to build all kinds of things. He can move out of the pocket if you'd ever want him to. He can play from the gun. He can go from under center. He can ball handle and fake and run all this trick stuff that you want him
Yeah.
to. You can go 5 wide and he can get the ball out and boom, bing, bing, take you down the field and read things out quick game. He can throw the ball deep. Like you kind of have everything with him, but then you have to accept more mistakes with him than you will with the other top guys. If you just watch his best play, you're like, this is a top 5. This guy belongs
Yeah.
with Mahomes and them. And then it fools people because he's never consistent enough for that to stabilize. We've just never seen that. And last year was him at his absolute best, and he still was right up near the top of the league in turnover worthy plays. So it kind of goes as he goes a little bit. And at times they could just be like, you know what, we're just going to run the ball. Baker's having one of those days. We're just going to go crazy in the ground. It was enough. I don't know if that's sustainable. That was such a Liam thing. I don't know if Grizzard can match that, but it was an unbelievable offense to watch because they could do so many things at a high level in so many different ways.
Yeah, Baker, top 5 in a lot of metrics, but then lost 25th in EPA per play, lost on interception, EPA probably total, lost on interceptions, sacks, negative plays is kind of what you're alluding to. The game planning is the thing I think that made me nervous because, and you alluded to this. So when we think about Liam Cohen leaving, this offense was so impressive in 2 ways for me. One was the evolution over the course of the season. Talked about this a lot with the run game, obviously, moving from more of a zone base to the gap scheme as the season went on, with both backs too. A Bucks fan or Bucks writer I saw was posting about this in response to when I was posting Bucky Irving. He's right. Rashad White was great too. Like the line is just so good at it, and that's really the line gives me a lot of confidence in them. Regardless, it just sets such a floor for them. But then also Cohen's game planning week to week. This offense looks so different all the time. Some weeks there'd be 2 backs, 2 tight ends, 3 wide. Like they sometimes Baker would be an empty. Sometime, like you said, they'd be very run heavy, which is so great. But he's gone. So Josh Grizzard, I would say my classmate, but he's like way younger than me, which is upsetting. Was responsible for finding plays on 3rd down, is what I've gathered. Ben Solak brought this up when we did top 10 offenses. This was the best 3rd down offense in the NFL.
Yep.
It wasn't calling the plays, but he was a huge part of putting that together. So how do you you're more plugged into this organization than I am. Like, what have you heard about him? Are you optimistic about his ability to repeat what Cohen did? Because what Cohen did was so special last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you heard me on any show. I was basically just like, this is the kind of guy. I mean, and behind the scenes, but believe me, there's questions like, what kind of how mature is Cohen if he's the head guy? Like those kind of questions, like what's he going to be from a communication perspective? Like all the administrative stuff. Like you just take the chance because there's only a few of these guys out in the league that move the needle so much as a head coach that you could have Jimmy Garoppolo or or Jared Goff early in his career. Now he's a lot better, but and you can still threaten to win championships because they're that good. And that's why I think he'll be really hard to replace. Now they're really excited about Grizzard. I think the players were very excited. That was really important to keep the players really optimistic and excited, especially with the way the Cohen thing went down. The Bucks kind of have a really good sense culturally about what they need to do to keep everybody kind of on board. So I think that part mattered a lot. But how much can we know? I mean, everything there is positive. The relationship with the players is great. He's keeping a lot of the same stuff from last year. But you said it exactly, man. From a game planning perspective, you can't replicate another human being's brain and thought process as much as you might like to, and as much as you may try to simulate that. So in some ways, I worry that by trying to be so much of what they were last year, perhaps they realize, wait, we're missing the irreplaceable ingredient, which is Liam Cohen's brain, and we don't
Mm.
have that no matter how much we try to. And so I wonder if that does hold them up. But all it is a thought. We just don't know. They're so talented on offense too, which gets lost in all of it.
I
Is that
mean,
they also got like 100 dudes, so it's just a really good group, even if the coaching is a little worse.
they don't have the best 1-2 at receiver in the NFL. That's Philadelphia, Cincinnati,
And see, yeah,
but they got the best 1-2-3 and certainly the best 1-2-3-4 in my opinion. Is that fair? I mean, I
yeah,
don't even talk about champagne problems.
yeah,
You don't even know when they're going 11 who's playing the most. I mean, McMillan was incredible for them last year. Godwin's coming off the injury. Igbuka, I don't think there's a player who, after the draft, I heard more from people around the league that every single team wanted him than sorry, I'm saying his name wrong.
yeah,
Emeka Ibuka. Um, Palmer's decent too, Shepard. Like it's a ridiculous group of skill players. It's a ridiculous duo of running backs. It's a ridiculously good and ascendant offensive line. I if anything, and I should have had them higher on my top 10 offenses because the more I think I overweighted. I know we've been talking about Cohen and how great he is, but like, holy smokes, what a cabinet of
yeah.
ingredients Grizzard's getting to work with.
Yeah, I mean,
Ridiculous.
now Wirfs is banged up and Kate Otton's banged up, and so Wirfs going to miss maybe the first couple games, and Kate Otten hasn't practiced yet, I think, in camp, and I think he'll be out there soon. But so there's some questions, but I mean, the Ibuka thing stands out to me because you're exactly right. Everybody in the league's like, this is the type of play. And why did they say that? It goes back to everything we've been saying. This is how you win in today's NFL. You win with guys like this. Every team's trying to find one now. The Bucs have one in Godwin. They saw an opportunity to get another one. They know this unicorn type piece, even though they just drafted McMillan, he had a good rookie year, not the type of player they need to play this role. And even if Godwin they were sure was coming back healthy, you don't know how much longer that's going to be with, especially with his injury history. And so I think they saw the opportunity to add a player like this who fit the culture very, very well and was the type of player they wanted, and also was a position that they feel like in the NFL today, you need this guy to be able to do a lot of the stuff they want to do specifically in their offense too. Mike Evans stepped in and was that guy last year when Godwin went down, and he blocked more and he ran a lot of the in-breaking routes, and he was a guy over the middle of the field, and he was awesome. But you also want him to be able to not have to do that stuff all the time. So having Igbuka and having Godwin, now you have insane lineup versatility. And then McMillan can be this move piece. He can do some of the end around stuff. He's been great in the screen game. There were aspects McMillan could do, but they never felt like he could be the one-to-one replicate of what Godwin offered them in terms of versatility. And they didn't want Evans to be that guy, especially as he ages. So they found kind of the perfect piece to be able to do that. So it's just kind of understanding what the modern problems are in today's NFL and being able to solve them even when people aren't expecting you to. That's what good organizations do. And I think they've done that with Igbuka, and we'll see. I can't wait to see him in real games, but I think he just fits the game really well. He was my wide receiver one, I guess, unless you count Hunter as wide receiver. He was in my top 10 in the draft, I thought, because I just thought the fit in the NFL was perfect.
The worst injury is obviously a big deal.
Yeah.
Maybe you said maybe a couple games.
Yeah.
If it's 2 or 3 games, this division, I'm not freaking out too much. But if it stretches on, then we start to get worried. I mean, he's arguably one of the 2, 3 best left tackles in football. Some would say the best. So that's obviously massive. Charlie Heck, I think, is playing for him, right? Not School. So
Don't watch the tape.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially
Don't
because we talked about Baker and the sacks and the interceptions. It's just, we're like, wow, Baker Mayfield's so good now. Yeah, because whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone's constantly.
It's never just one thing. It's always a lot of things. And one of the reasons is he's got one of the best left tackles in the league protecting his blind side. And I think with Baker's propensity to hold the ball, it will matter if he's not consistently playing on time and playing within structure, which can be ebb and flow for him. So we'll see.
Cohen, he clearly had such faith too in the structure of Cohen's offense last year, and he played so much faster, and the ball was coming out quick, and brought the average depth of target down. So we'll see if he builds on that. So the flip side, though, of doubling down at receiver, like we can sit here and praise it and be like, man, who's even like just, so many footballs to go around. Well, the flip side is they didn't add an edge or linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
There is a cost to these things. They didn't add Jahad Campbell, who is who I wanted for them.
Yep.
And I'm looking at this defense, and the Bucs offense is a wagon. The defense is certainly better than the two defenses we have discussed. They're the best in the division, but there's holes. There are problems. This is a defense that was very good against the run last year and finished 23rd, sixth versus the run, 23rd against the pass and DVOA, 25th on third down. Pass rush versus coverage. Let's start there. Which do you think was the bigger problem? The lack of pass rush, rather, or coverage for this past defense?
Oh, coverage for sure. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. 4-man rush has been an issue since Shaq Barrett started to decline in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
So it's not that they are not without concern there, but I think they're more like league average there, where when it comes to the coverage, because of all the injuries, right? And that's the biggest question mark to me with the Bucs is health. I mean, you're already seeing injuries start to come up, but health for this team matters so much. Winfield, even when he played last year, was never healthy. He was basically, for all intents and purposes, he was not Antoine Winfield the entire season, was maybe the best safety in the league year before that. So massive drop off there, right? You're playing unplayable guys kind of at times because of the issues there. Jamel Dean exited several games last season. Zion McCollum missed time. They had injuries basically to every player in the secondary. And then in the playoffs, Jordan Whitehead gets in the car accident. So they just really were never whole. They didn't play one snap. They didn't play at all last season as a starting secondary. So now you've got Winfield back, supposedly fully healthy. You have Tyke Smith moving to strong safety, and we'll see how much that takes him out of the nickel. He was actually very good in the nickel last year. And you've got a competition with Dean at that cornerback spot. Dean's been good when he's been healthy, just doesn't create any splash plays for you. At what point do you need that? Will Ben Morrison provide more of that? We'll see who kind of wins that job. Zion McCollum's going to start at the other corner spot. Jacob Parrish has been running with the ones at nickels. They took him in the third round. So two rookies. Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't think Parrish's tape was very good in college, especially as a guy who played inside some. I liked that he played there, but I thought he got beat there a lot. But he's been, we'll see how it looks in the real action. They've been excited about him in the preseason action. So there's a lot more here. There's more upside here than there was last year. Last year, Bryce Hall got hurt in training camp, and then it was like from that point it just went straight when the starting corners got hurt. I mean, Josh Hayes, Tyreek Funderburk, Kayvon Merriweather, these guys were playing like major roles for this team. Linebacker, they were down bad in the same way. So you got to stay healthy as a group. At some point, everybody runs out of depth, and I think that's going to be key for this team in the secondary. And Winfield has to be one of the best players at his position. When he is, it's a totally different group. He's been one of those guys that creates advantages in splash plays, similar to what we talk about with Bates. And I think that he just wasn't that guy at all last year, and it really affected the group as a whole.
And he's so fundamental to the style of defense that Todd Bowles plays. I mean, Todd Bowles still running out that, 30% plus cover three. I mean, it's
still going to blitz you.
Having that rangy safety who can like play that Earl Thomas type role, as a prototype is so important. And Winfield being a diminished version of himself really affects everybody. And, I think with the corners, I like McCollum. I like, he's a little boomer bust, but
incredibly improved. Couldn't play
man on the football. But, right. I like him in that scheme. I like Ben Morrison hypothetically in this. I mean, I talked about him a little bit in the draft pod, but just to revisit for Bucs fans, some of the best defensive back tape you'll see in college before the injury at Notre Dame, and it's kind of been a mystery because of that. Can he return to that level of play? Because it's there, and
a strange fit in some ways, because Notre Dame played like this absurd amount of man coverage, and the Bucs haven't typically under Bowles. So what does that signify?
Yeah, I think the Bucs play like the least amount of man coverage in the entire NFL, honestly. Pass rush, to me, there's some intrigue. Yaya Diaby, I thought, took a real step forward, and then opposite him, Hassan Reddick, I think there's the question, like it was last year, can you just throw it out the window because all of the craziness with the contract stuff and missing the offseason and much of the season? I don't know. I mean, if he's anything like he was before that, then he's certainly an upgrade in this defense.
Probably one of the biggest X factors in the entire league, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if he's the guy from before the injuries that was really impactful pass rusher for 4 straight years, then that could be a massive difference. The Bucs haven't had somebody like that again since Shaq Barrett was really healthy and in his prime that could just win around the outside of the tackle. Like they're just easy to kind of sit and condense against as a rush group. And the twists are coming because it's bowls. The A-gap blitzes are coming. And so you just don't have to worry about those spread type of protections where you're getting up the field with your tackles and opening up those lanes. And so he's the guy, the only guy really, in my opinion, because I think you're right. Diaby improved, but he still really is a straight down the middle type of rusher, inside move type of rusher. And those guys are the pressure numbers are like, oh, the pressure numbers. Well, there's always a blocker between him and the quarterback. I think it's a different type of pressure than when you're about to sack the quarterback and, come in unblocked or beat a guy, so I think that the only upside with the rush group to me is in Reddick, and then Cansey in year 3, who has missed time both years because of health stuff too. So again, it keeps going back to health. I think when these guys have been healthy, really talented group. The linebacker group, different story, but the rest of the group has been really talented. They just haven't been able to stay consistently healthy as a group and play on the field together.
How great would it be if Jod Campbell was in this mix, though, in this front seven? Like, it'd be
Believe
such
me.
I don't
That would
know.
have been if he had been fully healthy before the draft. I'll just say this.
Apparently, he's fine.
I know now he looks fine.
Freaking
I watched his preseason game with the
Eagles
Eagles.
sprinkle their prixie dust on him, and he shows up day 1 of camp, no issues.
I was like,
Eagles.
man, he looks good, and it would be a great fit. And I was all about that pick as well. And I think if the shoulder hadn't been a concern, it very well he might be a Buck.
The Bucs weren't the only one, to feel that way. Cansey. I talked about Cansey a little bit. He was actually, I should have picked Reddick, but he was my X factor just because I liked him a lot ahead of the draft. He was injured. I thought he flashed as a pass rusher. You saw the athleticism, some of the hands. He's honestly pretty polished as a rusher, but the size also showed up to me in the run game. So be curious to see if he can build a little play strength this year because he has the potential, I think, to be really good alongside Vita Vea, who's still Vita Vea.
Yeah, you got to put him on a player like that, but he's kind of the perfect modern player where passing downs, you can do all kinds of stuff with him. Early downs, yeah, he's going to slip through a gap once in a while and get you tackles for loss, and then he's going to get knocked around other times. You just kind of got to live with it with this type of player.
The New Orleans Saints are the final team in the NFC South. We were joking about this ahead of taping that when news broke that Arch Manning is probably going to stay, it's been reported, I don't know if it's confirmed, that he's not going to probably declare for the NFL draft after this year. Saints fans were like, cool, we're going to be just as bad in 2026, baby. So important note here, this is a quarterback competition. We are recording this before preseason because I'm traveling on Wednesday. If you're listening to this, you probably already know, but I'm going to cover the Saints quarterbacks on my Tuesday pod. So, Saints fans, this is not like you're going to hear about the great Tyler Shuck, Jay Hayner, Spencer Rattler quarterback throwdown of 2025. I promise. So I want to talk to you more about the offense, kind of like just generally rather than the quarterbacks. But first, let's start with the defense, which is now coached by Brandon Staley.
I don't even know what to say. It feels like
such an insane pivot, by the way. Insane.
I mean, the Brandon Staley arc, doesn't he have a couple more years before they make the movie where he comes back from the midlife crisis and then he takes over a team? Like, it feels like this is too early. He hasn't been in the midlife. He has to go through the crisis first. Like, he already got a job as a D coordinator after everything he's been through. Like, I couldn't believe that when it happened. Just from an optics perspective, I just wouldn't have expected it. I mean, he's young and bright and maybe he'll learn from the past mistakes, but I did not expect to see him get a DC job again so soon.
I brought him up because I actually think it's interesting. I was looking at this group and trying to think about how they fit, and because I assume it's going to be, a scheme shift under him from what they did under Dennis Allen. And I'm looking at the group and kind of trying to see if it makes sense to me. Like it's such, Last year they were 12th against the pass, 30th against the run. Start there.
Mhm.
Um, they're not devoid of talent defensively.
No.
So I think that's important to know because I think I've been doing these power rankings. The Saints keep finishing at the bottom, and I don't think the defense isn't good, but there's at least promising players on this side of the ball. He has pieces at his disposal. That's kind of what I want to say. And actually, now the safeties are Justin Reed and Julian Blackmon. Like that's not bad. It actually makes sense for him too. But the cornerback group is pretty rough. We can talk about that. Defensive tackle, pretty rough. I think edge-wise, they brought Chase Young, who's, by the way, how old do you think Chase Young is off the top of your head?
27?
26.
26, okay.
Is that younger than Tyler Shuck? Hold on. I promise this is gonna be the last time I make one of those jokes. No, Tyler Shuck's 25. Okay. That actually shocked me when I looked it up. I was like, oh my God. Chase Young, Carl Granderson at edge, it's not one of the best pass rushes in football, but I think it's
Mhm.
competent. I think for the team though, they have to figure out kind of like who are we building around moving forward as we do this rebuild? Do we have the pieces in place? And I'm not quite sure any of the players I've just mentioned fit the bill there.
Yeah, I think that for their safety room to be this good on a team that, you wouldn't think of safety as like, oh, this super important position. You got to start there when you build. Like, it's almost like I was like, Justin Reed, why did you go here? I've like been like a fan of Justin Reed for a long time and
Yeah.
thought that he was like probably one of the more unheralded players in the league. I've been like, why did you go? And then Jonas Sanker in the draft was like, oh, they're taking another safety. Like Jordan Howden was playing last year. Now he's their fourth safety. And Julian
Yeah.
Blackmon, I was like, oh, somebody should pick him up. Like if he's healthy, he's been a really good player. The Saints got him. Like I'm like, man, they can never do this without a million safeties. Like that's always been their way. It feels like. But then you look at
Mm,
the cornerback position, and Alontae Taylor gets a lot of excitement. And I think moving forward, he's a really good player. Then when you ask him to play in man coverage, when you start to test him, sort of a little bit of Mike Hilton-esque here, like where you see the limitations show up in other areas of the field, particularly downfield and at the line of scrimmage sometimes in man coverage. So I think he's probably has got more holes than people care to admit. McKinstry is really interesting to me. I liked him in college. I think that he can be a good starter. The other corner spot, a revolving door. I think like I'm not sure who's going to win that. If Yiadom's going to win that job or what that's going to look like at that spot. But I think that overall, when you look at their front, it's like a fine group. But I really do wonder, like, does Godcho still have it? Because their ability to stop the run to me is a huge question
yeah.
mark. A huge question mark for Atlanta. Huge question mark for Carolina. We talked about. I think it's going to be better for Carolina for sure. I'm not sure the other two. That's going to be the case. They're just small up front. They just do not have a lot of guys that are
Yeah.
gap integrity is not what you think of when you think of Shepard and Brissy and Kalen Saunders. And so, what is that going to look like with this group, given how they're built? They're sort of built for long and late downs, but I'm not sure they get to long and late downs with some of the issues that they have. So, I still think that there is more talent here than what their record is probably going to show at the end of the year. But you go back to the other side of the ball, and it's just, I think some of the issues with a young offensive line still coming together, combined with one of the quarterback situations that I feel the least good about in the entire league, and a receiver room that probably isn't super deep. And we'll see what Olave's
Yeah.
health is
Well,
like.
yeah.
That all is a big question mark to me.
Um, yeah. Get to the offense in a second. Uh, I think I could see a world in which these safeties are good enough and Staley asks the corners to play less man and protects them a bit more, where you don't see like they're certainly not dominant, but they are able to limit explosives enough to be at least kind of competent defensively.
Mhm.
I know we're like talking about how bad the run defense is, and that's kind of was Brandon Staley's the thorn in his side with LA. But I think the edges should be fine. It really to me comes down to like, can the defensive tackle room play better against the run? And can these I mean, Justin Reed, I think, will be helpful in that regard too. He's
Yeah.
really, really a good run defender. I
Yes.
like McKinstry. He was my X factor actually when I did the Saints, just because I was like, who do you even like? Who's promising here? I thought he had his ups and downs, but I think I liked him in college, and I think he showed the ability to find the football, not get beaten too much for big plays. It's tough when you're a rookie corner in a bad group. It's not like he got to play next to,
Yeah.
world beaters.
Yeah.
Quincy Riley's another name I would put a star next to, the 4th round draft pick out of Louisville. I wouldn't be surprised if he pushes. But yeah, it's all told, certainly a unit in transition. Same with the offense. You alluded to this. And it kind of similar outside of the quarterback position, kind of similar vibes where they're like enough good players that they're not a train wreck. I think
Yeah.
like if Olave is healthy, Olave, Shaheed, Cooks/Wilson, that's not a bad group.
Mhm. Yeah.
Combination of Alvin Kamara with Devin Neal, who they drafted. We talk about him. Juwan Johnson is not a bad tight end. Eric McCoy is one of the better centers in football. So like there's decent enough players. I think you just, again, when you think about this team and who you're building for next year, I'm not sure. I feel the same way about the offense that I do about the defense, which is I'm not sure. You have like players who will be on the roster, but I don't think you have like your foundational pieces on offense.
This
Minus
season,
Olave,
yeah.
if he's healthy.
Other than obviously the quarterbacks, if you have, I'm of the opinion that neither of these quarterbacks, Shook or Rattler, are going to be the guy long term. So other than that that plot, the biggest thing about the Saints season to me is the offensive line. You've spent 4 first round picks on 4 of your 5 starters, and the 5th guy you spent a high second round pick on is actually your best player on the offensive line. And even though he's often hurt, and McCoy, who you mentioned, this season is so all about Kelvin Banks and Fuaga, and if Penning can be a guard, to me, that is like just the whole season for the Saints in a nutshell. Like Fuaga, now you're asking to switch sides. I don't know if people watch Fuaga because the Saints were out of the picture down the stretch last year. He really had some issues, and I think they're all fixable, though. Like I came away watching him against Caleb Chasen, and I'm like, well, Jason did kind of break out last year. He's a nice little story going into this year, but he got cooked. Like Fuaga got cooked by Jason in that matchup against the Raiders, like the penultimate week of the season, I think it was. And I came away like, man, I don't know if enough people talked about the fact that in pass protection, this guy really struggled, despite being probably one of the best players out of his stance in the league at his position. So how he develops, I think his issues are fixable, and that may be a story for another time, but I do think that's a big question. And then obviously how Banks plays is well, a lot of people saw him as an interior guy. I did. So that'll be a big question too.
If this offensive line stays healthy, and they were just destroyed by injuries last year, which is, like like I said, we're not going to get into the quarterbacks too much because I'm going to talk about them earlier in the week. Spencer Rattler, I mean, he played week 6 through 8 and 15 through 18. Olave played in like one of those games. Yeah. The offensive, I mean, I know I'm not, he didn't look good, but like nobody would have looked good in that situation. I kind of like that he got another shot this summer, to be honest, even with Tyler Shook in the mix. But to me, if the offensive line is okay, like Banks Jr., Kelvin Banks Jr. is a first round draft pick, Trevor Penning moving inside, McCoy, Ruiz, and Fuanga, I could see a world in which that's a good run blocking unit. I really could.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you got, Alvin Kamara, Kendra Miller, who's no longer in Dennis Allen's torture chamber. But Devin Neal, who I thought was an interesting pick. Cam Akers is in the mix. This team actually finished 14th in rushing DVOA last year. And there's a world in which they're not that bad running the football with Kellen Moore as the play caller. And I think regardless of what happens with the quarterback position, that to me, you'd be like, if you're really thinking about, okay, certainly there's a world in which Tyler Shook shocks the world and you feel like he might be your plan going forward. Okay. But if the goal of this year is to, like, again, establish your building blocks in the rebuild and set the table for another quarterback in the future, to me, that's something to build on. If you can have like a top 10 rushing attack with that line and those backs, you start to feel good about directionally where the franchise is headed.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's why I say, like, it's all about how this group plays. And you said it, I think run game wise, I'm really intrigued because I think Fuaga and Penning both especially are way better run blockers than they are pass protection, probably McCoy as well. And then we'll see Banks, like what he's capable of at left tackle. I saw him as more of a player that I thought would be better inside. Eventually, perhaps that's where he goes, the way of Penning. But eventually, man, you spent all these picks on tackles. Penning was a tackle in the first round. Banks, Fuaga. You really cannot miss on those picks, especially with what they're trying to build right now. They're trying to get quarterback and they're trying to get tackle, and they've just kind of keep taking bites of the apple because they're not figuring it out yet. And so they're going to have to keep doing that. And then the other positions in the team that we've kind of talked about are kind of relying on Cam Jordan and Demario Davis and kind of some vets now, or guys who, as we mentioned with Young and Granderson, it's like they're long and lay downs guys. They're nice to have, but these aren't the guys you want playing 60 snaps a game at edge rusher necessarily. So I think they're a team that is just constantly in some sort of flux. This is the closest we've got to a rebuild. And in some ways, they're still
Yeah.
hanging on. It's like past the point where they actually could like
Yeah.
move off of anything that with value, like really. So
Signing Justin Reed was like,
I couldn't believe it.
I was just like, again, we both like him. He's a really good player. But I was like, what are we doing here? Arguably the Tyler Shook pick, second rounder on the quarterback. In some ways, you're like, it makes sense. And I liked Shook as a prospect, I think, more than you. Yeah, but I didn't think it was a first rounder or anything like that. Yeah. But I liked him on a prospect where a team where the timeline made sense, and I didn't quite understand the thinking here for a team that knows they're not going to be competitive and has desperately needed draft picks and desperately needed an infusion of young talent. It was somewhat perplexing to me, and I know Saints fans as well were pretty upset about it. I think the other piece we got to talk about here when we talk about, again, setting the table for the future, rebuilding, identifying your foundational pieces is the head coach, Kellen Moore. Because I think I think Kellen Moore benefited from the fact that everybody thought Mike McCarthy was going to be the Saints' only choice, and when Moore ended up taking the job, again, I don't have my finger entirely on the pulse of Saints Nation, but I was pleasantly surprised on behalf of Saints fans because I thought this to me was a pretty thankless. You're going through a rebuild. In some ways, there are advantages that come with that for sure. But I think with Moore, at least, there's a level of excitement around the offense. What I think so interesting, John, is I don't know what the hell that offense is going to look like. He's called a bunch of different styles of offenses in the NFL. And obviously, it's going to really come down to who plays quarterback, no doubt. But to me, like that's going to be one of the more interesting plot lines with the Saints all season is one, can Moore do the job? How is he as a manager and all of that? And two, what does his offense look like now that he has the keys?
Yeah, I mean, the number one reason why the NFC South's in the state that it is the unknowns of quarterback, the unknowns of coaching, right? You can trace it all there. And I think some of the Panthers feel like they've kind of found their way. The Falcons are hopeful. We'll see. I think the second year with that staff's going to be probably a big one. And I think that the Saints, I truly just don't even know. I am at a loss. It doesn't seem like Kellen Moore was the top choice for head coach anywhere really, and except for maybe New Orleans after everybody else had already kind of gone their way at that point. And then Doug Nussmeier coming in here too. We talked about that. Like that is really interesting. How does he fit and mold with Kellen Moore? Like what's that relationship going to look like? Who's going to be calling the shots there? Is there tension there? Those guys have both held some real power before.
Seeing to sabotage Spencer Rattler so that they can bust for Nuss? Or
honestly, it's crossed my mind that it could look pretty. I think it's just, I mean, they have all these sort of subplots to them, which is why I think too many, which is why I'm like, yeah, it's not like this is as bad of a roster as a 5-win team normally has, but I wonder if they end up there because the questions of quarterback and coaching are so significant to me. And the relational kind of dynamics there are not like established or veteran, like the Raiders situation where it's like, okay, these guys are pros, like they know what they're doing. I'm just not quite sure we're going to get that dynamic out of this room just yet.
All right. Moment of truth. Where do these teams end up finishing? I was leaning one way before we did this, but you've kind of swayed me a little bit on the number 2 team. Yeah. You go first, and then I'll let you know if I agree. I think I know where you're going to go.
Yes, I'm going to go Bucks to win this one. And I think the only way it wouldn't happen was injuries and Grizzard being a disaster. Baker going back to like the worst of that would surprise me. I actually am gonna go Carolina second, and this one's really hard. I kind of made it sound like it was like dumber than it was earlier to pick Atlanta first, but I actually think it's very difficult, and it probably depends on a lot of Penix
Yeah.
Young, how you feel about that. I'm gonna go Carolina by a nose over Atlanta, and then New Orleans to finish last.
Okay, so I came into this thinking the flipping Atlanta and Carolina.
What do you think about Penix compared to Young? That's the
I
real
know.
question.
I wish they could combine into one man. Young Penix or Penix Young. That's such a great question. Like, who would you take in
Yeah.
a vacuum? Because I actually do like attributes of them both. I think they both also have not to like. I think they both have the mental makeup to do it too.
Yeah,
And like
for sure.
I find them to both to be like incredibly impressive humans.
Yeah.
I think they both have good play callers. They both have some talent around them.
I look at it as I liked Bryce Young more pre-draft, and then he's had actually a larger sample size of being bad, but
Yeah.
also being good than Penix.
That's
and
right.
Penix, the 3 games that I didn't. So that's sort of how I look at it, but I could very easily be wrong.
I think that I'm gonna stick with Atlanta because
Yeah.
the Panthers secondary and defensive talent is just too. I think the Falcons paid a short-term premium to upgrade their pass rush. That will probably be the difference.
Yeah.
Will it work out long term? That is a open question. Will it be worth it? That is very debatable. But I think Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot really not Raheem really, but Terry Fontenot was like, "This is it. I gotta do this." So, I think I'm gonna lean them, but it is close, man. It is close. And then so the Bucks on top, the Saints on the bottom. That goes without saying, I suppose. All right, this has been a lot of fun. We have one more division, the AFC South, who I've put off to the end because of the world's most upsetting quarterback battle. Actually, the world's most upsetting is probably the Browns, who by the time you listen to this will have begun. So I will be discussing that early in the week, but you already know that because you probably listened to it. Thank you again for joining me, Jon. Folks, please go check out everything he does. He mentioned at the beginning, but the Read Optional podcast with Ollie is just fantastic, and both of their Substacks you should check out. Thank you also to everybody at Omaha Productions, Kirsten Sebecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Tashton. I will be back next week to do week 2 preseason and the AFC South. I will also be back with another edition of Viewer Discretion, which is my TV podcast with David Dennis Jr. Okay, so this week, you're listening to this, we are doing the season of Perfect Match. The following week, we're going to talk about the new Alien show, Alien Earth, which I'm really excited about because I love that kind of stuff.
I saw a trailer. I'm pretty excited about
it.
That
Looks
one.
good. Did you watch Fargo with Noah Hawley?
I've watched a little bit of it. I have not
Okay.
finished it, but
You should go watch the first 3 seasons of Fargo. Are amazing. That is giving me a lot of hope, and I love sci-fi too, so I'll watch anything sci-fi. And that's been it all for this week. I will see you guys next week.